the cool aspects of the foundation and the network is that it's a membership foundation. So we have over 51 members from the largest banks such as like Goldman Sachs, HSBC, and also BNP Paribas, all the way to the DTCC, and then also crypto native entities, funds, additional trading firms, and builders who are contributing to the governance and growth of the ecosystem. So there's support within the broader network within Canton. And then lastly, to add, like overall, the core fundamental tenet of like a strong and vibrant network are assets, applications, users, and infrastructure. And within Canton, we have components of all of these working together and have facilitated where we are today, in the sense that most people in crypto are still very shocked, thinking, oh, where did Canton come from? Why is it within the top 20 in like a month? But the things that we have been concertedly building this over the past 10 years, making the partnerships, and also making sure that we're not launching like what typically happens, where people launch a token with just a white paper, no use cases, and no technology. But for us, make sure that we have the things in line. So all these announcements people are seeing think it's just out of nowhere, but this has been concerted work for a number of years and months coming into bearing.
Alrighty, everybody, what is going on? Welcome back to another CYPRX video deep dive. In today's video, we're going to be diving into some groundbreaking fundamental developments going on Canton, some huge things that have recently been said by top executives by some of the largest companies in the stablecoin space in recent panel discussions. And then towards the end of today's video breakdown, we're going to be doing a quick technical analysis update, taking a look at some updated levels on Canton to be paying attention to in the coming days ahead, as price action has just recently bounced back. Considering that, starting here, hypebeast.eth posted this over on X. Canton, the network, just surpassed Avalanche on market cap, on coin market cap. New financial rails, are you ready? If we come over here to CoinGecko, you can see for a fact Canton coin just poked right back up into that top 30 spot, briefly surpassing Avalanche in terms of market capitalization just about an hour ago as of time of recording. Now, that is not the point of today's video breakdown. Nonetheless, it just goes to show that people are starting to pay attention to Canton. And just like how back in the early days, if you've been a member of CYPRX or been following CYPRX for some time, I've been covering XRP, Ripple, and XRP for the longest time in this space, since 2016. It's still my biggest bag to this day, and I'm still a firm believer of XRP's price, but I'm a diversified investor in that same feeling. Doing the deep research that I was doing back in the early days in 2016 and 2017 that made me buy XRP sub 20 cents is the same feeling that I'm personally getting with Canton, not financial advice. Let me show you guys why. It is not and has anything to do with recent price appreciation. It has everything to do with the underlying fundamentals and the people that are talking about it. So first, I want to introduce you guys to this organization here, Yellow Card, the operating system for modern money movement, backed by leading global businesses like Bybit, Visa, PayPal, Western Union. They have over 106 plus tier 1 banking and liquidity partners and are readily available in 35 plus countries. Now, check this out. We scroll right down here to the bottom. They are also partnered with Visa. It says down here, trusted by global companies, Visa leverages Yellow Card to streamline treasury operations and enhance liquidity management. Their partnership enables faster, cost-effective money movement cross borders, ensuring their infrastructure remains agile and efficient. And on a recent panel discussion that was just dropped 10 hours ago, shout out to the CYPRX researchers for sharing this one in the private CYPRX research Discord, only has 230 views. Take a second and listen to Chris Maurice, the co-founder and CEO of this organization, Yellow Card, first introduce himself to you guys so that way you get a gist of how important this Yellow Card organization is, so that way you kind of understand how when he says something massive in regards to Canton, you should be paying attention. This isn't some guy with just no valid credentials or just Twitter hypey influencer. No, this is a guy that's probably aligned with regulations to a very high tier degree, sits in with banking partners and people the likes of Visa and PayPal and Western Union, So he's not just some random dude. And I'm going to play a video clip that is absolutely going to blow your mind on something that he said on this interview from January 21st, 2026 about Canton Network. Now, just listen to who Yellow Card is.
Yes. Yeah. Happy to. So I mean, high level, right? What we do at Yellow Card, we are the largest licensed stablecoin payments infrastructure provider for emerging markets. So we work across Africa, parts of Southeast Asia, South America, Middle East, basically anywhere in the world my mom doesn't want me going. And what we do is we provide the full infrastructure for companies to be able to enter the space, right? So digital asset infrastructure, everything from, wallets and sending, receiving across, various different chains to fiat payments, being able to make US dollar payments on and off ramping against 50 currencies, mostly emerging market currencies, and then compliance infrastructure, right? Keeping everybody safe. So we do that for companies like Visa, PayPal, Western Union, a number of large remittance companies, and then large corporates, airlines, companies like that. And so, yeah, very much focused on real world use cases and applications of the technology, right? All of our customers are using us for payments, right? Payments to individuals, payments from individuals, payments to businesses, invoice settlement, treasury management, right? How do you move corporate funds around the world when SWIFT and the banking system, aren't built for your country? And so, yeah, very practical. We're the practical side of the industry, right? Not the dog and cat coin side of the industry.
So I just wanted you guys to hear him say those things so that you have a gist and understanding of the fact that this guy is not just some random dude. He is aligned with regulatory clarity, regulations across the board, emerging jurisdictions, partnered with the likes of giants like Visa, PayPal, Western Union, over 106 top tier banking partners in their lineup. You would assume that he has some type of information in regards to how this space operates. With that in mind, in this recent panel discussion, alongside Eric from Digital Asset and Jason Yanowitz, the podcast host of Quadrillions, listen to what Chris here says. This is insane that he was just flat out open to say this, considering everything that has happened in this space in regards to other public blockchains up until this point. Take a second and listen to how, in my personal opinion, bullish this is for Canton Network.
Yes, 100%. And this is all I think about all day. I don't even have hobbies. I just think about stable coins and FX all day. And so, yeah, I mean, I think, look, I think that is key. But I think that people oversimplify the concept of bringing FX on chain. And there have been a number of companies, even now, there's a number of companies that are trying to bring FX on chain, which sounds great, right? And, you can raise a bunch of money and, everybody loves the idea of bringing FX on chain. But the actual process of doing that involves working with a ton of institutions in a ton of countries that are not going to do this on public blockchains. And they're not going to do it, with assets that they don't have some semblance of control over. Right. And I think, this is where a lot of what, Eric and Canton, really helps with, and a lot of where this comes in is as you think about, institutions in these countries that need to be on chain for on chain FX to truly happen, right? The banks, the telcos, the large corporates, et cetera. Look, we had a call with the C-suite of a bank, one of the largest banks, in emerging markets today. These guys are not going to use a chain that they don't have control over the consensus. They don't have control over the ledger. They don't have control over any of it. Why would they, right? They're a massive bank. Why would they give up that control? And so I think, you need a system where all of these banks have interoperability, but also have control, right? And that's, to me, that's really the magic of what, Canton has built, and why, why I think that like the solution that these guys are working on is really the only way to bring FX on chain, right? I don't think you can actually just issue stable coins for all these different currencies the way that, Tether and Circle have. I think the US dollar is a very unique currency in global trade. These other currencies are going to be controlled by banks. These stable coins are going to be controlled by banks. They're going to be controlled by, the financial institutions in each of these countries. And they're going to want, a certain level of control to feel comfortable actually putting this stuff on chain and making this stuff available. And so I think, as you think about FX on chain, there is still a long way to go because there are a lot of institutions that you need to bring on chain. And frankly, Canton is, one of the only ways that we've seen of actually being able to convince these guys that it's safe to move on chain.
Canton is one of the only ways that they've seen so far to convince these large financial institutions to move on chain. What? That blew my mind when I heard that, considering this gentleman's business background, his organization, and what they do, partnering with the likes of Visa, PayPal, Western Union, 106 top-tier banks and financial institutions. Mind-blowing stuff here. Last video clip I'll play is where he goes on to talk about how Canton has the potential to come up and compare towards giants like Swift. Take a second here and listen.
Make payments that they otherwise couldn't make, to use it as an alternative to US correspondent banking, things like that. And, look, if I had to pick one sort of thing over the next 5 years that, I'm excited about, and that, frankly, look, I'm not a paid Canton spokesperson. I've been asking. They keep telling me no. Uval and Eric said no money. I just got to keep saying nice things. I don't get paid to do it though. But one of the things that gets me excited about like emerging markets, the trends, and Canton is the ability to actually replace correspondent banking and Swift. But one of the things that gets me excited about like emerging markets, the trends, and Canton is the ability to actually replace correspondent banking and Swift and sort of this intermediary system that so many parts of the world struggle with. I think that, look, if you're a European bank that has easy access to JP Morgan or to Citibank, then this isn't a problem for you. But if you are a bank anywhere in emerging markets, you typically don't have that direct access. There are countries in Africa and South America where there are no banks in the country that have direct US correspondent banking access, which means they have to go through another country, usually a neighboring country, at great cost to get access to US dollars to be able to move. So you end up, 2-3 layers deep in emerging markets trying to move dollars. And the ability, this technology obviously cuts all that out. It cuts out all these middlemen. It cuts out all of this. And the ability for, Canton and, technology, this type of technology to make these institutions feel safe moving money, right? To feel, secure, to feel like they still have that control. They still have that, the privacy that they need. All of that is critical as we think about how does this technology actually replace correspondent banking? Because it's not going to happen on a public chain. It's going to happen on individual banking sort of networks.
That was now the second time in this panel discussion that he reiterated that these banks are not going to adopt public blockchains for what needs to happen in FX and everything else in this digital transformation, which is just massive because this guy has some valid credentials. He's not just some random Twitter influencer making up his opinion. He probably sits in on these panel discussions and these closed door meetings behind the scenes, considering the likes of his organization. Now, rolling over here, that video breakdown. If you guys are enjoying this one so far, smash that thumbs up button and subscribe. Here, this goes on to say, institutional networks like Canton Network are showing what next-gen rails look like. Privacy-enabled, interoperable, and able to support complex multi-party transactions that either fully settle or do not settle at all. This is coming from Tharimmune. Them posting this, that institutional networks like Canton goes hand in hand with what the gentleman Chris was saying. Now, coming over here to a panel discussion that took place just about 2 months ago, only has 105 views. Here we have another member of the Canton network, the CEO of Tharimmune, Mark Wendland. Listen to what he says about his DAT strategy in a panel discussion from just a couple of months ago.
What's the driver of this institutional interest, and are there specific idiosyncratic, differentiators that have gathered this interest?
Yeah, and first I forgot to mention Tharimmune is the Canton DAT, so that's also for those that aren't familiar with Tharimmune yet. Hopefully you will be. But obviously there's been an explosion of that. I think that's just more of a natural market phenomenon. When you see breakthrough technology evolve and emerge, then you usually see good ideas, capital, et cetera, chase after that. You look at the explosion in private markets, private credit, private equity. That's kind of the natural evolution of that. And for me, the more interesting question is about the differentiated models of DATs. It started more just of kind of a capital flywheel type transaction. And so at Tharimmune, as an example, it's not just about acquiring coin and continuing to do that. It's more about how you can have differentiated returns and get involved in different projects, which I think some will talk about. And then, for my specific DAT is more about the Canton ecosystem and how we can help evolve that infrastructure. It's, early days for that, blockchain and coin. So very much focused in the network and how to build out that across the ecosystem. So I think you also see, and I heard this in the previous panel a little bit, the convergence of obviously TradFi and DeFi, and I think Canton's well positioned to be right in the center of that. Like it's happening faster than ever before. And I think it's, a special time and moment for Canton.
Canton is well positioned to be in the middle of the transformation of TradFi and DeFi. And that leads me over here to this groundbreaking announcement from just yesterday, where I said that this is not a startup experiment. This is not a pilot. This is regulated capital on regulated infrastructure. Tharimmune Inc. just priced a $55 million registered offering to accelerate the expansion and development on Canton, and Clear Street is running the book. If we take a second and we look over at the PR Newswire report, this is from January 20th, 2026, and some of the highlights go on to read, THAR, the first publicly traded company to leverage Canton Coin to support the Canton network's ability to digitize traditional financial markets, today announced the pricing of a $55 million registered offering. Tharimmune Inc. operates a differentiated digital asset treasury strategy by actively participating in the Canton network. And if we come over here, to finish this off, it says the offering will provide the company with additional growth capital for the continued expansion and development of its Canton-centric digital asset treasury strategy, as well as with the working capital for general corporate purposes. Clear Street is acting as a sole bookrunner for the offering. So more phenomenal Canton developments left and right. Again, ladies and gentlemen, do your own personal research. With all of that in a nutshell, transitioning over to the technical analysis aspect of the CYPRX private community. We are one of the most accurate analysts on the face of the retail spectrum, and it is because of the institutional software that we have built over the last 4 years, i.e. giving our private community members access to these institutional dark pools and the delta zones. In this previous update from over 48 hours ago, well in advance, when Canton was trading at around the 12,257, I had mentioned to you guys in this most recent update that if we can hold above the 12,257, the next area of interest that we needed to see Canton break above was the 15,361. Currently now we are trading at the 15,361, so we'll go over a brief technical analysis update, but I've curated a playlist for you guys on the CYPRX YouTube for those of you all who are just fixated attention on our XRP and Canton analysis. We'll start to throw some others in there as well this year, but our primary focus is just on XRP and Canton. You guys can go over to the CYPRX YouTube, click on the TA breakdowns playlist, and that is where anytime that we do a technical analysis update, we will upload the video in that playlist. All right. So that way you guys can go back and watch it in case you're busy, you miss it, you want to recap on some of the levels that we've touched on and talked about. With that being said, let's just briefly go over the update. If we go into our Canton USD analysis section in the private CYPRX Discord, where our institutional scalper gives these updates utilizing our software every single day that there are new updates, when we just had some very interesting levels pop up on Canton. We now have a new institutional sell dark pool coming in at the highest point at 27,279. So let's just take a real quick look at Canton's price action. As you guys can see, we held above that 12,257 institutional buy dark pool that we mentioned in our last update, and we have come right up into the 15,237. So if the current market sentiment can continue to remain optimistic, we saw a brief update from President Trump on the Greenland tariff announcement debacle that was going on and taking place, which kind of de-escalated the situation, in which we talked about in our last update, which drove back some market optimism and helped rekindle some of the sentiment and losses from previous weeks. With that being said, if that can continue, considering that tomorrow we have core PCE, we have GDP figures, we have unemployment claims in terms of scheduled data from the United States, we still have a bunch of things later this week that we need to be mindful of, like the Bank of Japan monetary policy decision that could definitely affect global market sentiment across the globe. However, nonetheless, if we can see the optimism remain firm in the total cryptocurrency market, and we can see a firm break and sustainable hold above the 15,237, then I have a firm belief that we will likely see a revisitation of the high from January 1st, and that would put us at around the next institutional sell dark pool at around 18,198. If the sentiment continues from there, the next levels to be mindful of to the upside are going to be the 21,363 for some possible profit taking. And then above that, we have the 24,056 on our radar and the 27,279 as the highest institutional sell dark pool right now on our radar for some higher price targets on Canton in case we start to go into price discovery if we break above the current level at the 15,237. Now, as always, we try to paint you guys a realistic perspective, and it is not always about upside trajectories and targets here at CYPRX. We pay attention to the downside as well. If we cannot see a sustainable break and hold above the 15,237, sentiment deteriorates and worsens compared to where we're at. Say the total cryptocurrency market breaks below the $3 trillion threshold and starts to make its way down into the low $2 trillion areas of interest that we highlighted in yesterday's previous breakdown, then we're likely to see at least a revisitation of the 12,257. If at any point in time we break the 12,257, we are likely going to start to target these lows, and that would allow Canton to come back down into the 0.999 cent psychological level before buyers try and make an attempt to defend. Anything below the 0.999 on our radar to the downside, we have the 0.8237. And we also have the 0.6555 for a full-on retracement of the move from back in December 2025 that is still on the cards as a possibility, where I will 110% be looking to dollar cost average into some Canton positions if that does come into fruition. The levels that I highlighted where I dollar cost average in the previous video breakdowns at 11.5 cents, mentioning to you guys that I was buying a substantiating amount of Canton on the pullback, are now in profit. Hopefully you guys have been paying attention to those updates. Make sure that you guys smash that thumbs up button and subscribe to the CYPRX YouTube. And if anybody wants access to these accurate institutional delta zones and all of this research that is readily available inside the private CYPRX Discord, you guys can head over to CYPRXtrading.com and you guys can tap in with us in 2026, some of the realest research and institutional technical analysis in the game. Many blessings to you guys. We hope that you all enjoyed today. As always, none of this is financial advice. I'm not telling you guys to go out there and invest in Canton coin. Always do your own personal research. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video breakdown.